Have you ever wondered what it actually takes to sneak a weapon past the most advanced air defense system on Earth? A system so dense and so deadly that it turns the sky into a wall of steel? Not just one missile, but 5 of them, flying low, fast and silent, straight into the heart of Russian territory. Because that is exactly what happened on a morning that changed the rules of modern warfare. And the story of how those missiles got through is not just about technology, it is about pure, raw human ingenuity against impossible odds. If you're ready to see how a $500,000 missile outsmarted a $1 billion defense network, then smash that like button right now, subscribe to the channel so you never miss another breakdown like this, and share this video with someone who needs to understand why the world of warfare will never be the same again. Trust me, by the end of this, you will look at the sky differently. Picture this. The clock reads 5:30 in the morning. The sky over Ukraine is still dark, heavy with the kind of silence that comes before a storm. Then, out of nowhere, a sound cuts through the cold air. Not a roar, but a scream. A missile, the size of a school bus, ignites its engine and lifts off a truck trailer with a violent shudder. It is called the FP-5 Flamingo, and it is not just another drone or a simple rocket. This thing is a flying contradiction, a masterpiece of improvisation that shouldn't work, but somehow, impossibly, it does. It drops down to just 50 meters above the ground, hugging the earth like a shadow, and turns east. Its target is not a military base or a troop convoy. Its target is a factory, a single building that holds the key to Russia's entire long-range strike capability. Now, before we go any further, you need to understand what this missile really is. If you look at it from the outside, it looks like a Frankenstein creation, and honestly, that is exactly what it is. It uses a jet engine borrowed from a Soviet-era trainer aircraft, a relic from the Cold War, strapped onto a modern airframe. This engine sits buried deep in the tail, pushing the whole thing along with a sound that is more like an old lawnmower than a weapon of war. But the real secret, the part that Moscow should be genuinely terrified of, is not the engine or the body. It is a flat gray disc, about the size of a dinner plate, set into the spine of the missile. That little disc is the brain that keeps this whole thing alive. And it is the reason why 5 of these missiles are about to become the biggest headache Russia has ever faced. The launch is messy. The 5 missiles fan out immediately. They don't fly in a neat line because a neat line is easy to track. Instead, they spread across 5 different headings, 5 different bearings, all converging on the same point from completely different directions. Think about a flock of birds scattering when a predator approaches. It is chaos, but it is intentional chaos. 5 missiles coming from 5 different angles are 5 times harder to shoot down than 5 missiles flying single file. This is not an accident. This is strategy, pure and simple. On the Russian side, a radar operator is sitting in a dark bunker, staring at a green screen that has become his entire world. He has been at this post for hours, maybe days, and his eyes are tired. He watches the dish sweep the horizon, looking for anything that shouldn't be there. Nothing. He leans closer, squinting. Then a flicker. A return at the very edge of the scan. It is faint, low, and wrong. It appears for a heartbeat, then disappears, then comes back. His training kicks in. For 3 years, he has been hunting drones, watching the sky for the telltale signs of an incoming attack. He knows the shape of a lie, and this return feels like one. But he calls it up the chain anyway, because a flickering radar is a radar that is trying to tell you something, and ignoring it could cost him everything. What that operator doesn't know is that he is fighting against 2 invisible enemies. The first one is the curvature of the Earth itself. Radar travels in a straight line, but the planet is round. That sounds simple, but it changes everything. The Flamingo missiles are hugging the deck at 50 meters, which means they are tucked behind the bulge of the planet. The Earth itself rises up between the missile and the radar, creating a physical barrier that no amount of power can overcome. An S-400 system, the most feared air defense in the world, can engage targets 400 kilometers away. That is like shooting from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. But it can't shoot what it can't see. And it won't see these missiles until they are nearly on top of it, maybe 30 kilometers away, which is almost too close to react. The second enemy is the missile's own skin. Most missiles are made of aluminum, which reflects radar like a mirror, but the Flamingo is different. Its fuselage is made of wound fiberglass, a material that absorbs radar waves instead of bouncing them back. The pulse from the radar hits the surface and simply disappears, soaking into the material like water into a sponge. This makes the missile nearly invisible to radar, but there is a catch. The engine housing has to be metal to survive the heat of its own exhaust. So there is a small, bright spot of radar return that rides along the spine of the missile. It is quieter than a normal target, but it is there, a tiny silver coin in a sea of noise. And that tiny coin is enough for the Russian defenses to get a lock. As the missiles push deeper into Russian airspace, the defenses start to react. One Flamingo makes a slight course correction, a dogleg, and clips the edge of a missile battery's engagement zone. For once, a Russian radar holds the track long enough to fire. A 2-ton interceptor missile catapults out of its launch tube, lights its motor, and tears through the sky at nearly a mile per second. The launch roar rolls across a town that was asleep just seconds ago, shaking windows and waking families. The interceptor tips over at the top of its arc and dives, aiming for the Flamingo below. Then, at 40 meters above the missile, it bursts into empty air. A wall of steel fragments rakes the sky, but the Flamingo slides out from underneath it without a scratch. The S-300, the long-range workhorse of Russian air defense, just got beaten by the ground itself. Now, this is where the story gets interesting. The interceptor that missed cost more than the missile it failed to hit. Russian tax rubles at work. The S-300's interceptor carries a warhead packed with 143 kilograms of high explosive, wrapped in thousands of pre-cut steel fragments. It has a radio fuse that is supposed to detect when a target drifts into range and detonate, shredding the sky with a cloud of steel. But here's the problem. That radio fuse listens for something the size of a fighter jet. When it looks down at a missile flying 150 feet above the dirt, it can't tell the difference between the missile and the ground bouncing back at it. So it reads the dirt and fires early. The cloud blooms 40 meters above the Flamingo, but the missile is already past it, flying on, completely unaware that it was ever in danger. This is the fundamental flaw in Russian air defense. It was built to stop jets and ballistic missiles flying at high altitude, not something mowing the grass like a lawnmower. The low-altitude blind spot is the reason Russia poured a fortune into developing the S-400. But even the S-400 has the same weakness. Low and slow is the language that Russian radar simply doesn't speak fluently. But wait, the missiles aren't out of the woods yet. Far from it. The next layer of defense is a system called the Pantsir, which is like a bouncer at the back door. It is a truck that marries a radar to a pair of rapid-fire cannons, and its job is to handle whatever slips past the big missiles out front. A Pantsir crew snaps a lock on one of the Flamingos. The twin 30mm cannons whirl around, barrels rising as the firing solution hardens. Or they are 3 seconds from a burst of fire that would shred the missile like paper, when suddenly the lock breaks. The barrels drift off the bearing, tracking nothing. The missile slides past and keeps going. The Pantsir did everything right, and it still came up empty. Why? Because the missile never gave it a still target to hold. This is called the Doppler notch, and it is one of the most beautiful, infuriating concepts in all of physics. A tracking radar doesn't care about shapes. It hunts movement. Anything closing faster than the dirt behind it lights up bright. But to avoid the roar of all that ground bouncing back at it, the radar dumps anything sitting near 0 speed, writes it off as dirt, and ignores it. This creates a narrow notch of deafness right around not moving. The Flamingo's course happened to run crossways to the Pantsir, sliding across the beam instead of driving at it. So the speed of the missile relative to the radar fell to nothing. It was moving, sure, but not toward the thing watching for it. To the radar, the missile read as motionless as a fence post, and the filter swept it into the trash with the weeds and the water towers. I need you to stop for a second and think about how insane this is. A missile flying at 850 kilometers per hour was completely invisible to a radar specifically designed to hunt and kill it because of a quirk in geometry, and the missile didn't do it on purpose. It can't do anything on purpose. The planner who drew that course on a map back in Ukraine just happened to draw it across the beam. It was luck, but it was also strategy. The whole route was designed to exploit every weakness in the Russian defense network. Now, by this point, all 5 missiles are still flying. But the most dangerous threat is waiting up ahead. It isn't on a ridge or hidden in a valley. It's parked at 33,000 feet, and it has no horizon to beat. 90 minutes out, 10 kilometers over the Volga River, a Russian A-50 radar plane is sweeping the sky. This is a massive aircraft with a rotating radar dome on its spine, and it is the last set of eyes for a country that has had its ground radar network chewed to scrap by 2 years of Ukrainian strikes. The A-50 is looking down, and from up there, there's no bulge of the earth to hide behind. The missile, with its hot metal engine, paints just fine against the cold ground. The operator sees it, 200 kilometers out, clean as a bell. So sit back, take a breath, and if you're getting value from this breakdown, hit that like button one more time and drop a comment below. Tell me, what do you think is the most unstoppable weapon in modern warfare? I read every single comment, and I want to know your take. Now, let's get back to the sky, because the A-50 just changed everything. The A-50 operator keys his mic. New track, low and slow. Heading 075, passing to control. Somewhere below, a MiG-31 crew's morning just got interesting. They have been on alert since midnight, engines warm, waiting for a call that might never come. But now it has come. The MiG-31 is a jet built by the Soviets to do one thing, run down low-flying cruise missiles. It is Russia's fastest interceptor, capable of Mach 2.8, which means it can fly almost 3 times the speed of sound. And it is about to do exactly what it was built to do. But here is where the attack gets really clever. The A-50 doesn't send the MiG after the missile directly. It hands the track to a ground control station, and the station starts walking the MiG onto the missile with the jet's own radar switched off, silent, emitting nothing, steered entirely by the A-50 overhead. This is called a silent intercept, and it is the most unfair tactic in air-to-air warfare. A fighter jet carries a receiver that screams the second an enemy radar locks it. The Flamingo carries nothing of the kind. No receiver, no warning, no clue the MiG even exists. The missile holds its heading, flat and level, obedient as a train on a track, while a 30-ton interceptor slides into the sky behind it like a car merging into a lane a sleepy driver never bothered to check. The MiG doesn't chase the missile. It cuts an angle, swings wide, then hauls back in hard until the Flamingo is almost straight down its nose. An R-37M missile drops off the rail and screams away at better than 5 times the speed of sound, closing the gap before the Flamingo can fly past the edge of a trap it was never built to see. First contact. A flash on the deck, and one of the 5 missiles simply stops existing. The jet banks, resets, hunts, and 40 seconds later, it does it all over again. 2 of 5 gone. Both of them flat and level to the last instant because flat and level was the only thing either one ever knew how to be. But the swing wide that the MiG pilot did, the angle it took to get a clean shot, that wasn't showboating. That was pure geometry. Sideways, the Flamingo sat in the exact blind zone that beat the Pantsir on the border. So the controller walked his shooter around the sky until the crossing target became a closing one, dragging it up out of the notch into a clean, bright lock. The missile he fired, the R-37M, was built to reach down into all the ground noise and pick one slow, low target out of it. A rifle shot from the next county over at a target that never hears the trigger. 2 down, 3 still boring east. So why did those survivors live? Because even perfect coverage runs into simple math. 1 A-50, 1 MiG, with a finite rack of missiles, it can only spend 1 target at a time. And this is not a quiet night. Hundreds of FP-1 and Ludi drones are crossing into more than a dozen Russian regions at once. Some of them are cheap decoys, shaped to throw back a radar return the size of a cruise missile. Each one costs less than a used riding mower, and it still forces a decision on an interceptor worth more than a house. Up in the A-50, the threat jumped from 3 names to 300. And tonight, Russia is short on shooters. While that MiG worked the 2 Flamingos it could physically reach, the other 3 drove 100 kilometers deeper into the dark. They slipped into a wedge of sky no interceptor could swing to in time. The cheapest things in the air tonight just bought the expensive ones a clear road by being everywhere at once, and by not being worth a single missile apiece. Now, look at this next part, because this is where the technology gets almost philosophical. The 3 surviving Flamingos don't know they made it. There is nothing aboard them to tell them. No data link home, they just fly the line somebody drew. For them, down toward the Volga cities, closing on a wall of interference built to shove them off course. A wall made of pure counterfeit signal. 180 kilometers out, the 3 survivors cross into the thickest electronic warfare zone on the whole route. Every satellite receiver over the Volga starts singing the same counterfeit tune. The fake signal says the missiles are drifting south, of course, sliding toward open farmland 40 kilometers off anything worth a warhead. They are not. All 3 hold 50 meters off the deck, arrow straight, and not one shades a single degree off heading. This is spoofing, the clever kind of attack. Not brute jamming. Seduction? A GPS signal falls 20,000 kilometers to reach the ground. By the time it lands, it is a whisper, quieter than the background hiss. A receiver only hears it because it knows the exact tune to listen for. That is the gap every spoofer pries open. The jamming crew never shouts over that whisper. They imitate it. They pump out a stronger, flawless fake, and gently walk the receiver's idea of where it is off to one side. The antenna drinks it in, and the missile follows, wherever the fake fix leads. But it doesn't work on these 3. And the reason is that flat gray disc set into each missile spine, the one from the opening shot, a controlled reception pattern antenna, a CRPA. And it is not one antenna, but a ring of them wired to a single brain. Think of a man at a loud party with 16 ears. He can plug 15 of them at once, aim each plug at a different loudmouth, and keep the last ear open for the one voice that matters. The jamming crew ends up shouting into a cone of pure silence while the real satellites come through clean overhead. And there's the whole electronic war in one number. 16 ears go deaf in 15 directions at once, and not one more. Right about now, I want you to do me a favor. If this story is blowing your mind, if you are seeing warfare in a completely new light, then hit that subscribe button right now. It is completely free, and it helps me keep making deep dives like this one. And better yet, share this video with a friend who loves history or technology. I promise you, they will thank you. Now, where were we? Oh yes, the factory. The antenna is why the plant up ahead is minutes from getting torn open. The factory in Cheboksary makes the KDA antenna, Russia's own version of the very disc, keeping the Flamingo straight and level. They stamp them out by the thousand. It is the reason Russian drones and missiles still punched through Ukrainian jamming to hit apartment blocks. Every time Ukraine fielded fresh jammers, Russia bolted more ears onto those antennas to beat them. The null bites. The real fix holds. The gyros counting every turn since launch quietly hold the line underneath. 3 missiles punch out the far side of the electronic warfare zone, noses still locked on Cheboksary. 90 seconds out, 16 kilometers from the wire. A canister on a track vehicle inside the fence coughs a missile straight up on compressed gas. The launcher rocks back on its treads as the missile clears the tube. Then the motor lights and it screams away. The interceptor tips hard onto the incoming Flamingo, and the lead missile comes apart short of the fence line. Fiberglass and burning fuel tumbling onto the trees outside the wire. This is the Tor M2. NATO calls it the SA-15 gauntlet. A short-range interceptor built to guard one site and nothing else, parked inside the perimeter, waiting for exactly this. The crew almost missed it. The Flamingos didn't come in from the southwest where Ukraine sits. They came in from the northeast, overflying the whole region, sliding past, then hooking back to run in from a bearing nobody had a gun pointed at. The fuel that the low road kept eating back at the border bought this exact move. A 1,000-kilometer flight, stretched past 500. Chicago to Houston, 1 liter at a time. A $500,000 missile burned its whole fuel margin to slip past the deepest air defense belt on Earth for one thing. Surprise, a blind missile can't improvise. So the whole detour got baked in on a laptop hours before the trucks rolled, low and flat. No diving arc to catch on the way down. It handed the Tor crew seconds of warning where a straight-in shot would have given them minutes, almost enough. That Tor still did what an S-400 battery worth $500 million couldn't manage all morning. And the reason is where it's parked. Every trick that carried the Flamingo 500 kilometers was a way of not flying at the radar. But the last radar sits on the target itself. And the target is the one thing this missile has to fly straight at, head on. The notch is gone. The Doppler is huge. And a missile doing 850 an hour paints hard and steady. Right system, right geometry. But the Tor's radar rides just a few meters off the deck. So its reach against a wave skimmer stays short, a dozen odd kilometers, a handful of seconds to clean track. And 2 more missiles are already inside it. Behind it, the second Flamingo throws itself away, and nobody lays a finger on it. It crosses the fence line, noses toward the main hall, and drills into open ground 100 meters short, flinging up a crater and a column of dirt and absolutely nothing else. 100 meters. That is the 14-meter circular error probable. Draw a circle around the bullseye just big enough to catch half your shots. And that is your number. 14 meters in clean air on a good day. And this is neither. That antenna spent the whole final run wrestling the spoofers on the missile's own position. It won by enough to keep the thing flying, not by enough to keep it sharp. The fix drifted a few meters. A few meters became 100. Cheap guidance, honest miss. The price of cranking these out by the 100 instead of the handful. And now the math is down to a single Flamingo, 1 missile, 1 aim point. And one last thing standing over the target, a net. Look at the towers ringing the main building, 15 of them thrown up since the last strike, laced together with heavy anti-drone mesh. Russia strung it up to catch the quadcopters and light drones that gutted this plant before. It stops a 50-kilogram quadcopter cold. Tangle, sputter, drop. But nobody has ever flown 6 tons into one at 800 kilometers an hour. In about 4 seconds, everybody finds out what happens. 30 seconds. The last Flamingo comes in flat and fast. The whine of that old trainer engine rolling ahead of it across the rooftops. 10 seconds. The tower line rushes up to fill the sky ahead. 5. 6 tons of missile hits the mesh and drives straight through it without shedding a single kilometer per hour. It punches through the roof and buries a 500-kilogram warhead deep in the building before the fuse. Held back a deliberate fraction of a second, let's go. Inside. The net might as well have been a grocery bag stretched across an interstate. All that mass doesn't argue with a net. It files a complaint on the way through, and the walls meant to stop the warhead become the thing that traps the blast. Nowhere for it to go but straight in. The building heaves up off its foundations, then folds inward upon itself. Windows blow out across Cheboksary as a column of smoke climbs into the morning. Every Shaheed drone that finds an apartment block, every caliber, every glide bomb. They all need the antenna that was built in that hall. Moscow can rebuild the machines. It cannot rebuild the months. This was not just an attack on a building. It was an attack on Russia's ability to fight. It was a message written in smoke and fire that no amount of steel or radar or geometry can stop a determined enemy who is willing to think differently. The crews in Ukraine are already loading the next 5. And somewhere out there, a radar operator is staring at his screen, waiting for a flicker he hopes never comes. So, what did we learn today? We learned that the most expensive defense systems in the world have blind spots. We learned that a cheap fiberglass missile with an old engine can outsmart a billion-dollar network. But most importantly, we learned that war is not won by the biggest army. It is won by the cleverest mind. And right now, the cleverest minds in the world are looking at every weakness, every gap, every line of code, and every curve of the planet, and they are drawing lines on a map that will change the course of history. The question is, who is drawing the next line, and where is it pointing? If you made it this far, you are exactly the kind of person who understands that the world is more complex than it looks. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video. Until next time, keep watching the sky.